number one, if you are listening, if you have felt dismissed, fibromyalgia is very real.
Hello and welcome to the Fusionary Health Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about all things fibromyalgia, and I have a special guest in store for you today, Tami Stackelhouse. She is an award-winning author. She's the founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute, and she's the host of the Fibromyalgia Podcast. She's also the executive producer of the feature documentary Invisible. Tammy teaches that fibromyalgia patients, she teaches them how to take back control of their lives and health using her signature Fibromyalgia Wellness Framework so that they can break free from the prison their bodies have become and begin living lives that they love. Welcome, Tammy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
For sure. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. So I got to do your podcast, which was so exciting. And I always research before my podcast, pull up new information, new science, especially if it's not a topic I speak into a lot. And so fibromyalgia, I was like, I know intuitively what Ayurveda would say to this, but let me research more. And I always love learning. So I learned so much. And then we got to do an IG live in time for Fibromyalgia Day. And now we get to do a podcast. And I get to share you with my podcast audience. And I'm really excited to have this conversation because autoimmune issues are exploding in women. And oftentimes women don't realize it. They think it's perimenopause. They think it's menopause. They think their body's just not working because they're aging. And they don't realize there's something underlying going on here. So let's kick off there with what is it that women aren't understanding is really an underlying autoimmune issue or a fibromyalgia issue, and how can people tell the difference?
Oh, that's such a good question. And it's not always easy, right? Because, we could be having this conversation exactly the opposite too. My doctors are saying it's this, but it's really perimenopause. It goes both ways. So, for fibromyalgia, I think one of the biggest differences is that fibromyalgia has this amplification effect. They've done functional MRIs and they can see where our brains literally process pain differently. So if you are experiencing the pain, the fatigue, the brain fog, the poor sleep, and you have this additional amplification, then I would definitely suspect something else. And so I'll give you an example of that. For a regular person out there, you walk down the hallway, you stub your toe, it's going to hurt. And then after a while, it's going to go away, right? Mm-hmm. For somebody with fibromyalgia, you stub your toe. Next thing you know, your legs hurt, your shoulders are hurting, everything hurts. It might even trigger a flare that lasts for a couple of days. It's a very different kind of thing that happens. So we do have to make sure that we're taking care of all of those underlying things because fibromyalgia will amplify it, right? And if we take it out, it won't be amplified. So that's probably the biggest difference. There are other things as well, but I think that's probably the biggest clue.
Got it. And what was your journey into becoming such a fibromyalgia expert? I would assume it's a personal story.
Oh, for sure. Yes. I was diagnosed in 2007 and I had been looking for answers for 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. I had read everything I could get my hands on, all the things that might tell me what's wrong with me. You know how it is.
Yeah.
And fibromyalgia was honestly the thing that I thought that was going on. But I couldn't get that answer from anyone. In fact, one of the times I messaged my doctor's office, the reply I got was, "What's that? Make an appointment. Come in. We'll talk about it." I did not make the appointment if she didn't even know what I was talking about, right?
Yeah, of course.
But when I finally got my diagnosis, it was like, yes, this is for sure the thing that has been going on my whole life. And when I figured out how to manage that and when I started getting better, I felt like it was almost my responsibility to pay that forward to other people who were struggling in the same way I had been, right?
Sure. I totally get that. So, what are the things around fibromyalgia that people don't realize are fibromyalgia?
Well, one of them, like I said, is that pain amplification
Yeah.
effect. There's a term that is used in electronics, explosive synchronization, and they actually did a computer model of what a fibro brain might be like, and this was the best way to explain it. And it's that idea where you stub your toe and now everything hurts, right? Explosive synchronization. We also are going to have poor sleep in a different way than just insomnia. We are going to have higher incidences of sleep issues, right? Like sleep apnea. 45% of fibromyalgia patients have sleep apnea. Compare that to the normal population, it's like less than 10.
Wow.
So
Is
it's
there a correlation there? Like if you have sleep apnea, it could be potentially causing the fibromyalgia?
Potentially,
Hmm.
because sleep is such I mean, you know this, it's such a
Yeah.
foundational thing for everything,
Right.
right? They had done a study, it was actually a sleep study, not a fibro study,
Sure.
but they took healthy college age kids and they kept them from getting into deep sleep, and they basically developed all the symptoms of fibromyalgia.
Really?
So for a lot of people, there's one doctor who calls fibromyalgia a sleep disorder.
Hmm.
And I think there's more going on than that, but
Sure.
that just highlights how important sleep is.
Wow.
And so, yes, you're absolutely right. If somebody does have sleep apnea, if they're struggling to get into those deep stages of sleep, if they've got a few other things going on,
Sure.
yeah, absolutely. That's something that could turn into fibromyalgia. So there's quite a few things that are going on that are different.
Sure. So,
Yeah.
what are some of the myths around fibromyalgia? Because my understanding is I went to Hippocrates Health Institute, I believe in 2018, near Thanksgiving, Christmas time. And I took my mom there because she's diabetic. And I thought, if every year we can just really reboot her system, we can keep reducing her diabetes till she's eventually off the insulin. And we did so much work there. We got her from 14 units of insulin to 4 in that time period. But what was interesting to me, I showed up just healthy, wanting to optimize. And as I hung out with a lot of guests, a lot of them had gone through their cancer journeys. A lot of them were there with autoimmune fibromyalgia. And I thought, why are y'all here? Like autoimmune, aren't we able to solve for this? Like, why are you in a place like this that's so serious? Um, but I also realized the stories I was listening to, they weren't heard, they weren't understood. People had lost kind of sympathy for them, like as if they complained too much about their pain and fatigue. And so just what are we going to do with you? Go solve your own problems.
Yep.
And that's when I realized, if autoimmune, and you can tell me these statistics, but if autoimmune affects women more than men, and women are so used to already burning the candle at both ends. When we have kids, it's a huge physical sacrifice and sleep sacrifice, amongst other things. We already have hormone fluctuations through our lives, puberty, through our 20s for whatever reasons, possibly through pregnancy, postpartum. A lot of women have thyroid conditions. Then we hit perimenopause, menopause. So we're used to being on some form of roller coaster at different times. So I think people just attribute their symptoms to one of those phases, or I'm just aging. I'm just tired because I overdo it. And so where is kind of the myth or the truth or the lines where a woman who's listening today might be like, I don't know if I really need to learn about fibromyalgia autoimmune. That's not me. Can you kind of name some of those symptoms that women might not be attributing and correlating to what's really happening? And thus, they might not never go to a rheumatologist or the right practitioner to assess what's really happening.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think the number one myth, and you kind of touched on this without really saying it, is that fibromyalgia is a real thing,
Yeah.
right? Like so many women are being told, oh, you're just getting older. Oh, it's just perimenopause. Oh, it's, all in your head. And I think that's part of why, I mean, I think that's part of why we don't have the answers we really need. I mean, we've known about fibromyalgia for over 200 years. We can see descriptions of it in medical literature that's over 200 years old. We should have some answers by now, but we just don't. And I think one of the reasons is because it has been seen as sort of this hysterical woman's disease.
Yeah.
Right? But it is very real. There are all sorts of things going wrong in your body. You know, we talked about sleep. We have alpha brainwave intrusions into slow wave delta sleep. Not that your doctor will be able to test these next few things, but we see that there's mitochondrial dysfunction specific to fibromyalgia that's different even than chronic fatigue syndrome. We see just extra nerve endings in the hands. Most of us have a straight neck. There are all these little pieces of evidence. So, number one, if you are listening, if you have felt dismissed, fibromyalgia is very real. The other part to that is your doctors are not being taught about this in medical school. I mean, to be fair to our primary care providers, you got to learn a little bit about a lot of things, right?
Sure.
So it's like inch deep, mile wide. And fibromyalgia, unfortunately, is one of the things that just gets a mention, but not like a deep dive. But that's also why they haven't been able to help you. So I think the first thing is that we need to understand that there could be other reasons. And again, I think the biggest difference between fibromyalgia and other things is this amplification effect. And fibromyalgia will move around. So if you hurt in the same place all the time, same level of pain, everything the same, that's not what fibromyalgia looks like. Fibromyalgia, you might have, your legs hurting one day, your back hurting the next day, your stomach hurting, so it kind of moves around. We do tend to have digestive issues, speaking of stomach. I've heard some providers say if you don't have the stomach issues, it's not fibromyalgia. So IBS, all of that kind of fun stuff. It is really difficult. And I think because fibromyalgia is so common in women, so let me just throw out some statistics here. I think every woman should be looking at this at least briefly, unless you have no pain. So the statistics are, number one, we have some research that's showing that 7.7% of women have fibromyalgia. That is 1 in 13 women.
That's
right?
crazy.
Yeah. So baker's dozen, one of those has fibromyalgia, right? Here's the other scary statistic that goes with that. I recently ran across an article that said 3 out of 4 people who have fibromyalgia are undiagnosed. So that 1 in 13 is only a quarter of the number of people who actually have fibromyalgia. So it's, 4 out of 13, we're almost talking a third.
Right. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
That is a lot. That's interesting. So here's another question I have. When we talk about autoimmune conditions, I had a rheumatologist on a long time ago, Dr. Monica, who was amazing, and she's more integrative in her approach. So when people show up, she's like, look, we don't always have a test that shows, yep, you're this one or you're that one. We're listening to symptoms. We're trying to understand. Like, where did this originate? Maybe you started with this autoimmune condition, but now you have this plus fibromyalgia. And she said it takes time to sit with the patient, talk about exercise, sleep, and all these areas. She's like, I make packets and handouts. She recommends my turmeric to her patients because she's like, I know anti-inflammatories on board is important to this journey, and they're going to take something for pain. I'd rather they take something natural. So when it comes to the symptoms, what are those main key symptoms? I'm assuming it's pain. I'm assuming it's joint pain. I'm assuming, like you talked about, sleep. What are some of those, list those symptoms for us?
Yeah. So joint pain, like you said, widespread body pain is the way that we describe that. It could be joint pain, but it can also be muscular pain. So for somebody who hasn't experienced this, one of the ways that I often describe it is, those times when maybe you've had the cold or the flu and you just sort of ache all over. That's what it feels like. Sometimes it's very specific pain, something very specific will hurt and that moves around. But for most people, it's just sort of this overall achy, uncomfortable, varying degrees of pain. So pain is the biggie. If you don't have pain, you don't have fibromyalgia. We talked about sleep, right? Unrefreshing sleep is the description of that. And one of my clients said, you sleep and sleep and sleep and you feel like you never slept, right? So you wake up feeling like you didn't get any sleep at all. Sometimes you wake up feeling worse than when you went to bed. Brain fog, so cognitive dysfunction. A lot of people get really scared about this one because it starts to feel like dementia, Alzheimer's, something like that. It is different. And it's not a degenerative problem. It is a temporary problem. So you can do things to get your brain back, but cognitive dysfunction is a biggie. And then, of course, fatigue. And the way that I like to describe fibro fatigue is it's like, you remember back in the day when we would have those cell phones and you'd charge them all night and they might last an hour, 45 minutes. That's what our energy is like. We can recharge, we can feel like we have all the energy of somebody else, but it goes so quick. We run out fast. And we don't have the same capacity. So those 4 symptoms are really the main ones. The unrefreshing sleep, the fatigue, the cognitive dysfunction, the widespread body pain. And then of course, from there, there's lots of other things. Most of us have headaches. Most of us have digestive issues, like I mentioned before. Most of us have thyroid issues, adrenal problems, nutritional deficiencies, depression, anxiety, so many things will show up.
It's so interesting at the end there when you said thyroid, adrenal. I thought, gosh, isn't that most women? Like, aren't we all chasing after that, trying to understand what is the problem? And I wonder if people are on like a slope and they just don't catch that that's actually the underlying issue. They're chasing a lot of other topics. I hear that sometimes in hormone replacement therapy practitioners right now. They're like, functional medicine is just chasing after everything. And I'm like, well, they're trying to get to the root cause. Usually root cause
and you kind of have to peel it like an onion.
Yeah.
Right. So if you have something like fibromyalgia, and this is 100% my story, diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and we start, like you said, chasing down what's wrong. My attitude at the time was like, okay, my body has a bunch of parts, but the parts also make the whole. Right. Yeah. And if all the parts work as well as possible, the whole is going to work as well as possible. So let's fix the thyroid. Let's fix the adrenals. Let's fix the sleep. All those little things as we sort of cancel them out, tick the boxes, peel the onion, whatever analogy you want to use. Eventually, all those things that fibromyalgia is amplifying, that's contributing to our pain, that's contributing to our poor sleep, our fatigue, our brain fog, as those get peeled away, we get better and better and better.
Sure. And where does inflammation play a role? I know what I think of that answer, but I'm curious what you'll say.
So the most interesting part about inflammation with fibromyalgia is, first of all, anti-inflammatories, like talking Advil, meloxicam, anti-inflammatory drugs, typically don't work that great for fibromyalgia.
Really?
Which is really interesting because when you think of fibromyalgia, most people think of inflammation, right? But those anti-inflammatories, I would say, they've worked in a small portion of my clients, but most of them, it was not the thing that helped them.
Right.
Having said that, though, fibromyalgia does come with inflammation. And one of the most interesting places is in your brain. So we have research showing that fibromyalgia does have a lot of inflammation in the brain. And so there are researchers that are looking at what are treatments, what are therapies, how do we cross that blood-brain barrier, how do we get to the inflammation in the brain and to calm that back down.
Wow.
So yeah, it's sort of an interesting dichotomy, right? Because we do have inflammation, we do have to address that.
Sure.
But something like Advil typically doesn't even touch fibro pain.
Wow, that's super interesting. I wonder, I mean, I sit so often in the science of inflammatory pathways because I study it for each summit and thing I speak on. And this year I spoke on Alzheimer's Summit and I spoke on Chronic Inflammation Summit. And when I dive each time into the science, pulling studies so I can talk about them. And of course, we know solutions like Advil work on COX-2 and certain pathways. But then when it comes to curcumin science, when I was doing my PhD, it was fascinating. Curcumin impacts NF-kappa B, TNF-alpha, a lot of master switches when it comes to inflammation, while it also impacts COX and LOX and those pathways. So it's almost like you're going after the master and you're going after 30 others underneath it. So I wonder if that's why curcumin is more effective in many ways for so many inflammatory pathways in what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And when we talk about neuroinflammation, all you have to do is take a great curcumin supplement with a meal or healthy fat. It'll cross the blood-brain barrier and do what we're asking here, which is great.
Yes, exactly. And I think you're probably right about that, dealing with the master switches versus, lower level.
Mhm.
And I think part of the problem here too is that a lot of us with fibromyalgia have issues like MTHFR gene mutation or gene mutations that affect how we detox and things like that. So it does make it harder for some of those traditional things that maybe people would try to help clear inflammation doesn't always work as well for us. Or may take longer to work. I was actually just talking with a client yesterday about this, and she's trying to clear some other things that are going on, and it's just taking forever. And, I'm like, hey, you just remember, like, our bodies don't do that as well as other people. So it is going to take you longer. And I think sometimes it's a matter of adjusting our expectations, right? But sometimes it's also a matter of maybe finding other things that work. And what you just said about curcumin, I think is such a good example of that.
Hi, I'm Dr. Shivani Gupta, and I created Fusionary Formulas because I believe everyone deserves a natural way to support their body's health. If you struggle with joint discomfort or stiffness, our Turmeric Gold delivers powerful curcumin in a form your body can truly absorb. It's science-backed with the highest quality ingredients and designed to support your body's natural inflammatory response. Take the next step in your health and wellness journey today. Visit fusionaryformulas.com and use code FusionaryHealth for 15% off. Fusionary Formulas, ancient wisdom, modern science, maximum impact. Yeah, it's kind of like we have to expand the toolkit. A lot of us I'm born in the United States, I'm exposed to the toolkits here. It wasn't until I went to India and said, you know what, I need a new approach, that I discovered the volume of what's available in Ayurveda. And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to build my own treasure chest out of what you guys have taught here because I can't carry it all back. No one's going to do everything. And that's what I teach, is what I consider the treasure chest knowledge that we need in our daily lives just to hold back the level of toxic burden and issues that we're kind of struggling with: food quality, air quality, water quality, all those issues. So, I mean, what it sounds like to me is a fibromyalgia person is actually like a lot of women. MTHFR, I have to watch the B vitamins and things I take, gut issues, bad detoxer, lots of brain fog in perimenopause, hard to attribute, like, where is it all coming from? Why is this so hard? I don't deal with the fatigue issue as much, or what you're talking about in those arenas. I luckily don't have joint pain, but I also am a pretty big user of curcumin. So it's just interesting because I can think of a lot of women who fit a lot of what you're talking about. And then it's just one or two more things that would put them over the edge into the fibromyalgia category. So it's interesting to me. So when it comes to the clients who you see, what are some of the strategies that you have seen are really supportive of them? Because I can only imagine someone comes and is frustrated, exhausted, and all of a sudden has a limited gas tank of energy, is what I'm hearing. Like every
Yeah.
day you're calibrating. And I think of that a little bit in perimenopause. Perimenopause, sometimes your body is not listening. Your body is not your own. You're not getting the same reactions out of your body. So you're constantly calibrating. This sounds like 1,000x of that, where on any given day, you might wake up and have a zero tank, but you had a full day ahead plan. So how
Yeah.
have you been able to guide your clients? What are kind of pieces of the framework to support them?
Yes. Yes. So you do describe our problems very well. I would say one of the first things that I do with my clients is to help them break the push crash cycle. So what a lot of us will do, and I think this is true just for women in general, but especially with fibromyalgia, is on the days where we feel pretty good, we want to do all the things, right?
Yeah.
And we just like everything that's been on the to-do list, everything that, you've been waiting to do because you didn't feel good, you try to do it all that day. And then you crash.
Yeah.
Right. And you might be out for several days. And so you have this huge roller coaster, right? You have a good day, you push real hard, you crash, right? So the first thing that I try to do is to break that so that we have more consistent energy, and it helps to fix that problem you were just talking about, right? When you have more consistent energy, you end up getting more done. It might not feel like it at first, right? Because you're doing less on the days where you feel better, but you also don't crash as hard. So you can do more on the days where you would have been, flat on your back, right?
Totally.
So it lets us make plans. It lets us, maybe commit to things, be a better mom, be a better employee, be a better friend, all of those things, right? So that's one of the first things that I do. I also, of course, work with my clients on making sure they've got the right doctor on their team, right? Because we do need to look at things like, is your thyroid working the way it should? Are your adrenals? Are you getting good sleep, or are you one of that 45% that has sleep apnea? So we work a lot on that. One of the things that I think is really important for us with fibromyalgia is learning how to manage the energy that we have. Yes, we need more energy, but we also need to better manage the energy that we have and make sure that we're actually spending it on the things that are important to us. Right? I think so often we go through this whole long list of shoulds. Right? I should do this. I should do that. My house needs to look like this. Being a mom needs to look like this. Right? And at the end of the day, we've got nothing left for the things that are important to us. Or maybe we give all our energy to work and then we come home and we have nothing for our families. Yeah. So really starting to think about budgeting our energy the way we would budget our money. And what is important? What do you need to say yes to? What do you say no to? So there's a lot of, I describe it like a three-legged stool. There are things that are really going wrong in your body, and those things need to be fixed. So we've got that very physical part of fibromyalgia that may need medications or supplements or whatever to fix what's going wrong. The second leg of the stool is our lifestyle. Are you getting good sleep? What's your sleep routine like? What food are you eating? Are you pacing yourself? That sort of thing. And then the third leg of the stool that I work a lot with my clients on is the mindset piece of it. How we think about our bodies, how we think about our illness. Are you always pushing yourself, beating yourself up, very self-critical? Or are you extending that self-love and self-care to yourself and giving your body what she needs in order to be able to heal?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm staring at you. If anyone's on video and sees my face, I'm like, you're talking to me. Oh my God. I have a team of all women, and my business partner, my COO, who's in my office with me, a lot of times I just go what I now call off the rails. I'm like, we need to double revenue. We need to do this. Like, everyone's going faster because I hang out with all the cool people in my industry. So I just see success and growth and scale. And so when I
Yes.
get back to work from conferences, I'm always like, let's go. And she goes, can I please remind you? We said we signed up for a marathon, not a sprint. Can I please remind you? You have kids who are teens and preteens like I do. Can I please
Yeah.
remind you? Yes, we can do that, but we might end up like killing ourselves on the path. And then what was the point? And I always have to have those meetings with her because I'm like, come on, like, why can't we just work 24/7 and win? And it's been such a reckoning to hit mid 40s and try to manipulate what's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
So I have somewhat, I played with HRT. I can, between testosterone and thyroid stuff, I can really amp up speed as if I'm fueling the car differently. But then I laugh because as an Ayurvedic practitioner, I know better. I know what the body is saying to you is a message. And if you're not going to listen to the message, it will just get louder. And there are seasons right now where my body gets really loud. It's my skin will all go dry, or my hair will fall out, or all of a sudden something will happen and I'll say, okay, sorry, I'll back up now. Sometimes it takes a real physical reaction for me to say, okay, fine. Because just short of that, a lot of us will try to keep burning the candle at both
That's
ends.
right.
We're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And honestly, isn't that a description of all womanhood and or motherhood? We
Oh,
are
yeah.
pushing on all fronts 24/7, whether we're working, an entrepreneur, mother, like all of these are a lot of hats that we wear.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wonder, are we causing our own, I don't even wonder, I know we're causing our own
Yeah.
dis-ease in the system. And then
Yes.
we talk about fibromyalgia. One question I have is, can you reverse out of it? Can you put fibromyalgia into remission so that you're not symptomatic and you're
Yeah.
thriving, but you're watching that line for yourself so you're not stepping back across the line?
Yeah, absolutely. And the answer to that is yes. My fibromyalgia has been in remission for years, going on almost 10 years now. And it's not a story that we hear very often.
Yeah.
Right? What we hear is fibromyalgia is horrible. There is no cure. There's not a whole lot we can even do for you. You know, our doctors are even saying these words to us.
Yeah.
And it's because they don't know any better, first of all. But it's just not true. It's absolutely possible to feel better. And I help people do that every single day. I'm not some random magical unicorn where I'm the only one who's ever done this.
Right.
I help people do this all the time. And just to, be clear, when I say my fibromyalgia is in remission, I mean, I have no symptoms. I, get pretty good sleep. I am still a mid 50s woman, right? And so there are still, I still have thyroid disease. I still have Hashimoto's. There's still things that are going on, but the fibro symptoms, the fibro piece of it is not a factor at all anymore. And so it absolutely is possible. And I would say that that's my mission in the world, is to make sure people know that. And I also want to go back to something you were just talking about. There are seasons in life. And I know I'm going to be speaking your language here, but if we look at the world around us, right, the world has seasons. We have winter where things look dead. They're not, but they look dead. And I think a lot of times fibromyalgia is that winter season for us, where we have to pull back. It looks like we've lost our lives in very practical ways. I might still be breathing. My heart might still be beating, but I've maybe lost my job, lost, hobbies, friends, family members, sometimes even. But that doesn't mean winter lasts forever. And it is very possible to put fibromyalgia into remission if you've got the right help. And your doctor might not be the right person to give you the right help because they just don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, I think it was at least 5 years ago, I was working out at my gym And a lady came up to me and she's like, yeah, I just went to rheumatology and they told me to take curcumin. And I was like, what? That's great. Can I meet this doctor? That's fantastic. She's like, yeah, my doctor said you're going to be dealing with chronic inflammation forever. You should consider curcumin. We know the science is very good. Versus I've seen others go to rheumatology and the answer is hydrochloroquine, Celebrex. Good luck to you.
And don't take the supplements because they're unregulated and you never know what's in them and it could be bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Supplements don't do anything. I don't know anything about those. Just don't waste your time or money. And I'm always like, your toolkit is yay big. And you aren't going to lean on 5,000 years of understanding of botanicals in the world and super spices and super foods to support this person in front of you. But I think that has shifted a lot. Since pandemic, I've seen a huge shift. And I work with doctors all the time. So I love them and I love to open their minds through science. I'm always like, hey, let's just sit in PubMed. That's your world. I'm just in your world showing you your science. And they're
That's
like,
right.
oh, okay, cool.
And that just goes back to the not being taught things, right? Like that is, I think, one of the biggest problems with fibromyalgia is we need that research. We need that evidence for our doctors to practice evidence-based medicine, right? Sure. And as we accumulate the good research, as we accumulate the data, that then changes what's being taught in medical school. It is, a 20, 30-year process, unfortunately, but that is really what we need to do. Meanwhile, I'm still going to go out there and help as many people as I can.
Absolutely. So what are some of those recent advancements in the science around fibromyalgia? Like what are we seeing that is published or that is being taught about?
Yeah. So the cool thing is that there are new things all the time. They do tend to be smaller studies, but that's usually where it starts, right? You get together a few people, see how it works, and then that gives you a yes or a no on if we make this a bigger study. One of the most interesting things that have come out in the last few years was a study that was done in London, and they took human antibodies and they injected them into mice, and those mice developed fibromyalgia-like symptoms. So that has sort of given us a clue that fibromyalgia is connected in some way to the immune system.
Okay.
Because again, those human antibodies, when they cleared the system, the mice went back to normal. So it wasn't like a don't give blood transfusions kind of a deal. It's it's totally fine. But it did give us that clue that there is something going on in the immune system that is causing fibromyalgia in some way. We still haven't tracked down exactly what, exactly how, but I think that is a huge clue and a huge step. A bit of research that I personally love. This is a little bit older, but there was research done in Israel using hyperbaric oxygen. And the reason that it excites me so much is it's the only study I've ever seen where they totally reversed fibromyalgia for people. Now, unfortunately, they didn't continue the study. So when they stopped hyperbaric oxygen, we don't know what happened. I'm sure there's some sort of maintenance, at least for a while. Sure. It's not a cure, but they basically gave hyperbaric oxygen treatments Monday through Friday for 2 months. So that's 40 sessions in 60 days. And a lot of the patients at the end of that, their pain was improved, sleep, fatigue, brain fog, all those things were improved. But there were some patients that if you were doing your diagnosis of them at that moment, you would not diagnose them with fibromyalgia. And I think that's really exciting.
That is exciting because there's a lot of these kinds of tools, hyperbaric being one of them, that are becoming more available. There's a lot more science. They're being trusted more. So I've met people at conferences who own hyperbaric, almost like med spas locally here. You have Restore Hyper Wellness, which is a national chain that has that. You can buy a membership and add that into your life in a more affordable way. So I think that's really great that was so effective. And I think the more science we can do like that on these biohacking tools is what we call them now, but longevity tools that we've had around for a while, it could be so great to see what is the right stack, although it might vary person to person, to get these kinds of results.
That's
And
right.
when it comes to autoimmune patients overall, I think we talked about this previously. What's that percentage of people who are fibromyalgia? You had a profound statistic, because I know when people think of autoimmune, they think of RA, rheumatoid arthritis. And you
Right.
said the level of study of fibromyalgia is just so disproportionate.
Yes. You do, like, you think of rheumatology, you think rheumatoid arthritis, right? But fibromyalgia affects so many more people. It is 17 times the number of people, approximately, depending on which, research you look at. And the number of research articles, they have 17 times the number of research articles. So 17 times the number of people, 17 times less, I guess, the number of research. So it's literally exactly opposite.
Wow.
Right. Fibromyalgia ranks, we're tied with last with scleroderma, just as a point of trivia. Last in terms of published research on fibromyalgia. And we affect the most people. So it's very clearly backwards. And again, this just goes back to, the problem we were talking about. We need more funding. We need more research. That research then needs to be taught in schools. And then eventually, it'll show up in the doctor's offices and patients can finally get help. But in the meantime, unfortunately, as fibromyalgia patients, we are going to have to take some of those matters into our own hands, do our own education, our own research, take things to our doctors and say, hey, have you seen this research? What do you think about trying this? That kind of thing.
What's interesting is we know women have not been studied in clinical trials for like the majority of history. And only recently, I think I read it was since 1992 or something, they started involving women in clinical trials. Even menopause wasn't studied on women because our cycles make us too much of a variant. And that's insane, right? So that's why every time I've had to take a medication post-surgery, I faint or I have some horrible issue. Every medicine is like giving me a horse's dose, because you're not dosing for a petite, small woman who takes no medications or drugs. And I try to explain that to doctors, and they're like, no, that's the standard dose. You'll be fine. And I'm always like, you simply don't understand. Everything should be cut into quarters for someone like me. And then the other piece of that is, I bet with fibromyalgia, the symptoms are so diffuse and varied, it's too hard to study. People want, can I give you one pill for one problem? And so
that is never going to work.
It's not clear cut.
Yeah.
It's like, why would I study this? It's going to take forever and the solutions are going to have to be varied, and that's not profitable. So
no,
it's going to take someone with a real special interest to study it.
That's right. That's right. And, just total Tammy opinion here. But I think eventually we're going to find that there's different kinds of fibromyalgia because it is so different from person to person.
Sure.
And what works is so different from person to person. That I think we're going to have different kinds of fibromyalgia, kind of like we have diabetes, but there's also different kinds, right? If you're type 1 versus type 2, there's a slightly different cause, slightly different treatments maybe. And so I think it's going to be similar to that eventually. Or we may discover that there are some things that are a different condition.
Sure.
Right. That we're lumping things together and it's actually a different condition. But you're right that this is what makes it so hard to treat, because it is like, okay, let's take all the fibro people that look the same and what works for them. And that's not what we're doing. And part of the problem with that is just getting people to participate in studies and things. I mean, when you've got a sick population, getting them to participate in a study isn't always easy because, again, we're feeling bad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So who wants to put in the time or the energy? One thought I had when you said that was you could have like 4 buckets. 4 is just an arbitrary number, but I wonder if it's like MTHFR driven. They just don't detox. So it's like a lymphatic issue. Then you've got the just neuroinflammation crowd. That's where they were going to be susceptible for some reason or another. Maybe that's through metabolic dysfunction, right? Insulin resistance. They're like a type 3 diabetes patient. That's neuroinflammation issues. And thus they're in that bucket of fibromyalgia. And then I wonder if it's like a sleep apnea crew. Like that's where they started, and that's from which everything got switched on. And then I wonder if it's like joint pain. So muscle joint issues, and there's a category there. So that would be so interesting if eventually we could really personalize medicine, which is one big buzzword we use right now. But if personalized medicine could get in there and start to kind of stratify which patient you are, and then the approach would be so different, and you'd save so much time, effort, and heartache approaching it with a new, fresh understanding of which category you're in. I mean, I wish that happened across all autoimmune conditions. I think
right.
So
that
many
should be
people,
the goal for everything, right?
yeah. And maybe we as women need to self-categorize, you know, like as we're on a lot of our functional medicine journeys. I'm a woman on a functional medicine journey. I've just been on it for a long time. And I've moved my whole life budget towards my health. So that's where I invest a lot of time and effort.
Yeah.
It's important if you can start to understand from your genetics, from your, like in my case, I know where my weak points are for my system, and really address from that arena. And that's usually the meeting I have with my functional medicine team. Like this year I had mold affected gut. And I said, you know where my motivation lies to do the work that you're about to ask me to do that I already know I have to do? I don't want to generate an autoimmune condition, because then I have to deal with that. That's a huge undertaking. I don't underestimate what it means, because I've worked with so many women who struggle with it. And so I said, that's the point I'm going to focus on now, is if I don't address this now, that is the after effect. And I think most people don't realize that our gut health and each piece of our health, like you said, the parts make up the whole. It's all tied together. And to ignore it, to ignore the symptoms we've been talking about today. If you're a woman and you're in your 40s and you're like, oh, I've just got brain fog, fatigue, and all the things you named, sleep issues, thyroid issues, just stacking up, don't dismiss it. Take a moment and go dig deeper, because you have an opportunity for prevention. When the body is sending you a message, take that to heart. A lot of my friends sometimes will say, that was a message from your body. Are you listening? And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Okay. You're right.
Exactly.
My friend looked at me today at the gym. She's like, your skin is dry and peeling. What happened to you? I was like, I don't know. She goes, well, shouldn't you pay attention and see why? I was like, yeah. I just assumed it's dehydration or travel stress. She's like,
well, you know, when we do that, right, we say, oh, well, it's just because I'm stressed right now. That's why I'm not sleeping well. Or it's, you know, because my kids are young and I have all this extra stuff I have to do. Or it's a stressful time at work right now. But what we don't do is we don't step back a few steps and realize, oh, it's always like this, right? Yes, maybe it's, you know, maybe I did just go through a hard period of stress, but I also do that all the time, right? And so I think we need to take that step back and like really get a longer look at what's going on. And whether you think you might have fibromyalgia or it's perimenopause, or it doesn't matter what the end answer is. The important thing is to know that this isn't normal.
Yeah.
Right? It might be common, but it's not normal. And so it's worth taking the time to track down what is going on. It might be as simple as, you know, some hormonal support, or, you know, supplements, or better sleep, prioritizing your sleep. Maybe it means a CPAP machine. Who knows? But we've got to dig into that, or like you said, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. I mean, at the point where I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, like it didn't just boom happen the day before.
Right.
Right.
It was an accumulation over time. And I think we forget that.
Yeah.
So I know that we're hitting the end of our hour together. One question I had, I know you ordered my turmeric and you had some clients start to take it. What were some of your experiences?
Yeah, so it is, this is so funny, Shivani. The first thing I noticed was how beautiful it is. Like the color, it's so intense, so much more than other supplements. And to me, like that intensity of color. It's like, a bright green broccoli versus a washed out pale broccoli. So I that to me, like without even taking it, it's different,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So, yes, I have been taking it now a couple of months. And, keep in mind, my fibromyalgia is already in remission, so I
Sure.
can't really speak to that.
Yeah.
But I definitely have noticed digestion being a little bit better. Right.
Awesome.
So, yeah. And then clients have been taking it as well. And, it's so interesting with people with fibromyalgia because sometimes when we start something new that's good for us, that actually is helping us, we have sort of a healing crisis and we might feel worse for a little bit.
Okay.
Right. So I did have a client that happened to, and I think I reached out to you about her. And I think that's another thing that's different about buying your supplements versus from a big company. I mean, for one thing, I know you, but also like you have this level of support that's beyond what you would get somewhere else. So if you are experiencing symptoms or if you need help tweaking, like, what do I do if I'm experiencing this? There is that extra level of advice. And so that client was able to do some of those things and she's able to use it now and is starting to feel better. So that's great. But I think, this is one of the things that we need with fibromyalgia is we do need a more individualized, personalized touch. And it sometimes means using different companies going about things different ways so that we can get that. Because, I mean, your big companies just aren't going to be able to provide that for you.
Yeah, for sure. And we all need some level of customization, and it's not
Yeah.
always easy to get a hold of the practitioner. So I always love to understand what's happening. Is it overheating? Is it the black pepper? Like, is there something I can do to help you and take it in the right way for you? Because a lot of
Right.
people have to take a curcumin supplement with a meal. Their digestion can't take such a potent curcumin dropping into the system. I noticed that early on. Anyone who is a little bit more elderly, let's say 70s, which is not elderly to me anymore, but 80s and beyond, they might need the additional support of taking it with food so it settles better in the system. So I love
Mm-hmm.
customizing that for people to see.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's data for me to understand how do people need support.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, so thank you for joining me today,
Yes.
Tammy. This has been so wonderful to get to talk to you and to understand more about fibromyalgia. I think it's important for my audience to hear about it and understand it because one loved one in your life, 1 in 13, potentially 4 in 13, are struggling with this and may have no idea that this is the issue. And they might have to go to a practitioner and say, hey, it could be this. These are all my symptoms. Can we talk about this? So I love that you're raising awareness around this and that you work with clients on helping them to win and put it into remission and move on with their lives, feeling like they're fully in remission and back to total vitality and health, which is incredible. And so where can people find you?
Well, the best way, I mean, if you're listening to this as a podcast, the best way is to find me on my podcast. So you can just search for Fibromyalgia Podcast wherever you're listening to this, or go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com. All the videos, audios, you can listen on the website too. And there's also a resources section on that website that has a bunch of resources for you. You can download free copies of my book, take my Fibromyalgia Wellness Style quiz. There's links to where you can watch that documentary. It's all out there. So fibromyalgiapodcast.com is the best spot.
Nice. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Tammy, for coming on the podcast today. This has been so awesome. I love learning about approaches we can take for our health and how to support our loved ones, our friends, the people in our community. So thank you. Thank you for joining me today. And for everyone listening to the Fusionary Health Podcast today, thank you for joining us. Can't wait to see you next week. And if you want to learn more about this podcast, you can visit my website, shivanigupta.com. Stay well, everyone. Stay vibrant, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks for joining me for this episode. Check out our sponsor, Fusionary Formulas, the potent turmeric supplement used by doctors around the U.S. for patients with pain and inflammation. www.fusionaryformulas.com. I'm your host, Dr. Shivani Gupta. For more, visit shivanigupta.com. Subscribe to this podcast in Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Click the follow button or subscribe in any of the apps that you use. That's all I've got for you on the Fusionary Health Podcast this week. You have the power to transform your health and achieve vibrant health starting today.